Everyone, this is a follow-up, bonus episode, a video version of the My 123 Cents podcast, Royal Rumble Ramblings Part 2. Chad Smart is joining the conversation as we are recording this during Monday Night Raw. And Chad, before we get to your thoughts on the Rumble, let's start with the breaking news, or at least the developing news. A new commentary team on Raw of Michael Cole and Pat McAfee has been announced, but also, probably more significantly, CM Punk out for 4 to 6 months, allegedly, with a tricep tear, I understand, that he suffered at the Royal Rumble. Now, you were watching and saw Raw tonight. I only saw a bit of a clip on social media with Drew McIntyre getting involved and then Sami Zayn making the save. So it seems like they're already starting to skirt the story, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do an injury angle, might as well, or if you're going to have an injury, might as well make an angle out of it. And it did play into the Rumble and the past storytelling with Drew. Thankfully, it was Drew that injured Punk. I say thankfully as far as storyline goes, but, if it had been someone like, I'm trying to think who else was in the Rumble, the guy that runs the LW, or not the LWO now, but the guy that turned on Rey Mysterio, let's say, Escobar.
Santos Escobar.
If he had injured CM Punk, it wouldn't have had the same impact. But with Drew, at least you can continue with the story and build a feud for when Punk comes back.
So now, are they saying that McIntyre injured him in the Rumble?
Yes, McIntyre came out, said that he has said some bad things about Punk since he's returned. He believes them all, and he's never been a spiritual person, but he did pray for that, and it happened. And so he targeted Punk and wanted to take him out.
One thing comes to mind. They always talk about when something like this happens, it opens up the opportunity for someone else. And obviously CM Punk was presumably, I shouldn't say obviously, but was presumably being primed and geared up for a WrestleMania moment, a WrestleMania match, finally getting that moment, if you will, with Seth Rollins. Now, Seth Rollins also nursing an injury, so I don't know if they go and fix Seth and Punk at the same time, and maybe they're hopefully both back in time for SummerSlam. But in the interim, Sami Zayn could be the one stepping up. I mean, this opens the door for others to maybe grab that brass ring, as someone used to like to say.
Yeah, and they have the Elimination Chamber coming up next month, which could be interesting, depending on how bad Seth's injury is. Is it a thing where if it was supposed to be Seth and Punk and now the Punk can't go, do you say, okay, Seth doesn't need to be champion either. Let's have him come out and say that the injury is worse than expected. He's not going to be able to go. And you crown a new champion at Elimination Chamber and then set up a challenger. Because I think, looking at it, I don't think that title is going to main event, or probably shouldn't main event one of the nights of WrestleMania. You figure if they're doing Cody Roman round 2, then that's going to headline one night. And, I think a women's title match should probably headline one night as well. So you don't need a necessarily big money match for your world title, for your Raw title. Unfortunately, the one that I think most people would probably want to see, and you could easily do, would be Gunther stepping in, although he, according to reports, is not going to be able to make it to Australia for Elimination Chamber due to his immigration status. So do you, just put a transitionary champion and then have Gunther win at Mania?
Interesting. Yeah, this really does open up all kinds of new opportunities and new possibilities, I guess. Everybody was hell bent that it was going to be Punk and Rollins and Cody and Roman and whatnot. So let's talk about how we got to Cody and Roman and go over your thoughts on the Royal Rumble, and I'll kind of chime in as you go along.
Okay, yeah, I listened to the podcast, which hopefully everyone watching this has done as well, to hear your thoughts. Yeah, overall, I thought it was an interesting show, having only 4 matches, which, granted with two Rumble matches that are each going to be guaranteed to go at least an hour, and in the case of the men's match, where you got kind of a mini match after at the end with the final two, I think less was definitely more in this case. Although more being more is the amount of promos and ads in between the first match and the second match. That's something that, granted, I understand why it's being done, but it's just as for watching, as watching at home, it's a killer. It's like, I could have ran out, got something to eat, came back, washed the dishes, and sat down and not missed anything. Uh, but no, I think starting off with the women's match, which was probably, in my opinion, the match of the night. I thought it was well executed, good surprises. The only thing about the surprise of Jordynne Grace being in there, the current Impact or current TNA champion, which follows up the tradition, I guess, of that they can say now the Impact. I see the TNA rebranding isn't working with me. I'm going to keep saying
Right.
Impact. The TNA champion being in the Royal Rumble, because Mickey James did it last year.
2 years.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh man, where was I last year? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was 2 years ago, but
Oh, all right, whatever. I mean, my point was that I was going to say is that I don't think the crowd really knew who she was when the music hit. When the music hit, my initial thought was, "Oh, that's Scott Steiner's music," and then I know she has built herself as Big Mama Pump or something like that. Like she and Steiner have teamed in the past,
oh, okay.
and so I'm like, "Oh, that's Jordynne Grace," and then she came out, and my first thought was that it was Zoe Stark.
Mm.
And I don't watch a whole lot of TNA. I don't watch the weekly Raw and SmackDown in full shows weekly either. So I'm going to admit that I am not the most knowledgeable at times on people and really don't know theme music at all.
Right.
But yeah, so Jordynne Grace was a nice surprise, and the fact that they gave her a bit of a shine in the
Yeah.
match, and I think, sadly, I think a match between her and Ivy Nile could be something that the fans would want to see now after getting a little glimpse of the face off in the Rumble. But other than that, Chelsea Green is probably the MVP of the match. I don't know if she's going to turn into a female R-Truth with her character, but
that could be.
but and that's not a slight thing. That's actually a bit of a compliment, that if you can be someone who can be entertaining without having to and keep the crowd going, as we saw with R-Truth in both Rumble matches.
Yeah.
Um,
I as you were talking about the theme music, someone had posted online today, as we're recording this, that the lack of people knowing everyone's theme music was apparent with the crowd. And so I should have looked. I don't remember what year it was that they started doing theme music. I don't think it was in '92 when Flair wrestled.
I don't think so.
And because I can remember there was like a cowbell that was always kind of going off. So is that element of surprise better when the superstar comes through the curtain or when their music hits? Because like you said, if I knew Jordynne Grace's theme music, because I was the same boat you were in, I didn't know who it was until they got the shot on her and we saw her.
No, I think theme music helps, and I think back to when Cena came back unexpected, when Edge made his return.
Yeah.
Like, it's that theme music that sets a crowd, especially I don't know how many video screens they had, because they didn't have the Titantron. So how soon does the audience get to see the person coming out?
Right. Yeah.
So that helps as well. So, and I have seen comments online as well about the lack of indistinguishable, or how a lot of theme music is indistinguishable right now. You don't have that, the glass shattering for Austin, or I guess Natalia does have kind of the Bret Hart guitar screech at the beginning of her music, but there's some other online wrestling YouTube channels that do quizzes where it's like name the wrestling theme song or identify, and I'm like, I got anything past the Attitude Era, I got nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but again, I think part of that is that's also me just not paying attention when the music comes out. I'm like, you and I've discussed that we don't our attention on wrestling is not as detailed as it was 30, 40 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
which is a sad statement that I have to utter that it's been that long.
Sad but
Uh,
true.
ah, but yeah, and I think Bailey winning the Roman's women's Rumble was the right call.
We talked
I
about that. We both called that one, I think, or
yeah, I think
thought of that.
yeah, I think my biggest surprise of the night was Becky Lynch, how she really didn't get much of a the shine and much of a story in the match. You figured that she would have had more interaction with Nia Jax,
Mm.
and I think having Jade Cargill debut and eliminate Nia kind of puts a focus on Jade to be something special. Whereas if Becky had eliminated Nia, then that might have taken something away from Jade. And it was good to see Jade. And um, you know, it'll be interesting to see if Jade shows up on TV this week or what the plans are for her. Um, but yeah, overall, you know, the match was a little sloppy at times. I can't remember if I texted you or just thought it, but there was a lot of shot calling that was being picked up on camera, and uh, I don't know if that's just a inexperience of you know people being in this large of a match or what the case was, but I don't think it didn't take away from the match enjoyment and
Mm.
entertainment value, um, but yeah, I think now the logical thing is how do we get from Bailey winning to her challenging Io Sky and not Rhea Ripley.
Yeah.
So, which is what I would expect, unless they're gonna, do the crazy thing and have Bailey beat Rhea and Damage Control holding all the belts.
Wow. I hope you didn't just speak that into existence.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. I think
Yeah.
that we'll see. Yeah, and then from there, you had the four-way um, snooze fest that was the Roman Reigns wins with help from solo match that we've seen for the last year and a half. And I've said it before. I got nothing against Roman Reigns. His title run just doesn't interest me anymore. And I don't think that anybody gave any of the challengers a real shot at winning. So, you have the foregone conclusion of the match, plus um, the fact that Roman could have lost without being pinned. I think had they gone that route, that really just wouldn't set right, because it would be a cheap way out of having Roman lose the titles after this amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were
So
kind of, I was more excited about it leading up to it. And then when it happened, I was just kind of indifferent to it because
the Randy Orton factor.
you knew you weren't getting, you knew uh, logically that it wasn't gonna end with someone else other than Roman coming out with the
Yeah.
belt. So,
Yeah. And like I said, Solo coming out and interfering is just, it's kind of like a rough bump in a TNA title match. You just know it's going to happen at some point and you're just waiting for it.
yeah.
And yeah, and I don't, Orton coming back, AJ coming back. I don't think either of them are really at a position to be challenging. Not that there's anything wrong with them challenging. I just don't think they had really been built up enough to challenge. And LA Knight had his match in Saudi Arabia, and from what I have seen, hasn't really done a whole lot since then. So yeah, you're dealing with three challengers that aren't really in that position, to be a credible threat at this time. So then the U.S. title match, Kevin Owens and what's his face,
Logan Paul.
Logan Paul, yes, the YouTuber. Again, Logan. What's that?
What a hater.
No, I just couldn't remember his name. But again, he has impressed me. When if you look back at the history of celebrities in wrestling,
Yeah.
no one expected a Logan Paul or even a Bad Bunny to
Right.
come in and be as good as they are.
Yeah.
You expect a Mr. T or a Drew Carey even, or a Jay Leno. And yeah, so I thought the match was good. Obviously, you got two great talents in there. The ending uh, was clever. I don't know if it worked in that large of a setting necessarily. It might have been more for a smaller crowd because the people in the cheap seats, I don't know if they understood what had happened.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, but no, I think it was clever and it gives Logan Paul a way out. And now he's going to get the honky tonk man type heat where you're just waiting for him to get beat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah. So,
Um, so the men's rumble,
yeah.
I kind of felt underwhelmed by it in terms of, and I talked about this on the podcast, and I'd like to hear what you think. 30 men, 30 superstars, even with the women, like Bailey said during the presser, there was not a need necessarily to bring back surprises or legends. And I think the Rumble, though, for so many years has gained that reputation of there's going to be at least a few surprises. And I know Andrade came back, but um, there was no legend or Hall of Fame or anyone coming out, which, I'm kind of, on both sides of the fence with
Mm.
that. It's like, yeah, Papa Shango coming out. We know he's not going to WrestleMania, and he has taken that spot away from someone else. That's the one argument, but I guess the surprises were not up to what I wanted because obviously Pat McAfee too, which I'm kind of over the announcers getting into the Rumble.
Yeah, I guess they gave it to Pat just because of they want to make sure all their announcers get a shot at the
Hmm.
Rumble. And again, I don't know. He has made a statement that it was a complete surprise to him. He was not expecting it, and
Mm.
part of me wants to believe that, seeing how he was wearing cowboy boots. Like,
Yeah.
he was in no, at least when they did the Rumble where all the announcers were called in, they all had their wrestling gear on,
Right.
but this seemed but then again, when he gets in there and then he just eliminates himself, like, is that great thinking on his part to figure out how to bridge the time until the next entrant is about to come in, or I don't know. But yeah, it again, I don't want to touch on any of the backstage stuff that happened leading up to the Rumble, but there may have been a reason why he was thrown in there last minute.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think the biggest thing, first off, the surprises. I agree with you that we've been conditioned for it, so it may take some reconditioning uh, to show that, hey, not every Rumble is going to have surprises. But after the women's match, where you had the return of Naomi, you had Jordan Grace, um, you had R-Truth, it's. I think people were expecting more from the Rumble, and even though if you pay attention to wrestling news and everything, you kind of knew Naomi was coming back. Same way with Andrade, like, so it wasn't like a big
Right.
surprise. And also, I don't, what's it been, 3 years since Andrade was in WWE,
Something
three,
like
four
that.
years.
Yeah.
So, and he wasn't. I know he was NXT champion and did well there, but then when he came up to the main roster, he didn't really do. I can't think of anything of note that he had done. And as we've had the discussion before, is how many WWE fans are watching AEW
Hmm.
to know that he's been wrestling for the last couple of years. So it maybe, that's a case of, does the audience even know who he is anymore? Or so, but yeah, other than that, there was really no surprises. And I think what hurt the men's Rumble, is you only had two legitimate winners. And so I think people were just biding the time until it came down to Cody and Punk.
Yeah.
And you and I were texting back and forth during the match. It seemed like Punk was the logical winner. Again, if you got that storyline, if Brock is going to be coming back and facing Roman, which who knows if those rumors were ever true, or if it just took on a life of their own. But Punk versus Seth was the way that it seemed to be going. So Punk winning, which I'm very disappointed that Punk did not win, because I lost out on the my 1, 2, 3 cents Royal Rumble contest winnings.
Oh, was he yours? I didn't even pay attention.
He was Rosie's. So
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that was good. Looking back in hindsight, I should have realized that Cody was winning, because they hit it's been 25 years since someone
Right.
has won back-to-back Rumbles. They
As
were hitting
soon
that
as
pretty
Michael
hard.
Cole said that, I'm like, and I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
Yeah. Subtlety and WWE do not know each other.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second. If we go with the record, the history, so Hogan won it in 1990, which he was already the champion. He won it in 91 and then went on to WrestleMania 7 to win the championship. Shawn Michaels won it in 95, challenged Diesel, did not win the championship, won it again in 96, challenges Bret Hart, wins the championship. Stone Cold Steve Austin wins it in 97, doesn't win the championship, doesn't even get a championship match because of all the stuff that went on with Shawn losing his smile, wins it again in 98, wins the championship at WrestleMania 14. So will this be Cody's chance? Will this be his opportunity, or will he break this uh, coincidental chain
No
of
chance.
sorts?
Yeah. I think if you're going to do it, Cody has to win, or else he's just going to be, he's going to be the Detroit Lions of WrestleMania. He's going to choke it away. But, and you and I discussed this after on the post WrestleMania show last year, and kind of talked about it before. I am not an anti-Cody person, but I just I'm not feeling the story of Cody finishing the story. Like, to me, it just skipped a lot of chapters in getting here. And then thinking about it after Cody won, because my initial thoughts were, wow, that's not that exciting, because we just had the match last year, and I am not a fan of repeat WrestleMania matches. It was one of my reasons why I don't think the Attitude Era was as good as it was, because all the Rock and Steve Austin matches at WrestleMania. You didn't really, to me, you didn't have enough top tier talent at that time to be champion. But that's a whole nother episode. But Cody winning, I think the other factor is the bloodline story, which, a year ago I was saying, well, it should have been Sammy or Jey Uso, because the story now looks to be like Solo is going to finally snap and turn on Roman. So should Solo get it? So bringing someone else into that storyline is the best analogy that I come up with is like the movie The Dark Knight, where for the first hour and 20 or 30 minutes, it's all about the Joker being the villain. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, here's Two-Face. He's going to step up, and, you got to fight him now. And it's like, wait, where did this guy come from? And that's where Cody comes into play, where, especially since after WrestleMania, maybe since SummerSlam, has Cody mentioned Roman at all and wanting to get back to facing Roman? He formed the tag team with Jay. They won the tag straps for a little bit, but it's like, I got to finish this story that I haven't been trying to finish for the last 7 months, if that makes sense.
It does, to an extent, and I do think that you can kind of cover that with the whole, Road to WrestleMania, and I guess they were throwing other obstacles Cody's way in Brock Lesnar and Shinsuke Nakamura and doing the tag team thing, which I didn't really understand that, but you just said it. I had kind of forgotten it already that it did happen. But you mentioned the Usos and the Bloodline and whatnot, and Jimmy and Jay starting the Rumble off. Circa 1989, Axe and Smash in there. Well, I guess they're really not a tag team anymore, though. But you think we're setting up? I mean, I'm going with the obvious choice of that being, and was before this even, but they're gonna face off at Mania in some form or fashion.
I would expect that. And, again, it kind of comes down to how is that story being told? And, I don't think that's a story that needs months and months of backstory, because you have that actually with, the last 10 years of them being a tag team. But with Jay having his Yeet shirt and Jay having his No Yeet shirt, like there's your backstory. There's your feud. If people can feud over shampoo commercials and cups of coffee being spilled,
Yes.
t-shirt merchandise is nothing. Yeah, I you know I I would go with that route, but I just think that something needs to happen with the bloodline story. And a year ago it was one of the hottest things in wrestling. Now I don't know if it's just my perception, but it doesn't seem to be. I don't think fans are really behind the bloodline. And we talk about the live audience versus the at-home audience. The live audience is going to cheer and they're going to acknowledge Roman when he's there because it's part of that group participation factor.
Yeah.
It's like we said, if Hulk Hogan had come out at Royal Rumble, the fans in attendance would have gone crazy, most likely. And, and then the people at home would be like, oh my gosh, I hate Hogan. I can't believe they brought him back. And it's just that difference in dynamic of in person versus, viewing it as a movie or a story. So, but I just think the bloodline story has to evolve into the next. If Cody isn't going to win, and again, if he doesn't, then I'm going to go with the rumor that Triple H is really still pissed at everything Cody said and did in AEW and breaking the throne. He's still miffed about that. So, which I don't know if you caught it after Cody won, but he did the too sweet hand signal and like kissed it twice and then put up the gun signal. So for the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. So the Elite finally did beat Punk, but yeah, I think the men's match, going back to that, the winner was anticlimactic. I don't know. There's just something about Cody that hasn't connected with me since he came into WWE. And I think it's kind of the same thing that Punk was doing, where it's like, kind of an, oh shucks, I'm just one of you and I love the fans and I'm going to be, I actually saw something a couple weeks ago that said, Cody Rhodes is the new John Cena in terms of face of the company.
Right.
And
yeah.
So maybe it's just the John Cena effect, but I don't know. But I mean, what are your thoughts? You gave your thoughts, but are you excited for the rematch? Are you disappointed we're not going to Mania this year to see it, and you can't throw your rubber chicken into the ring again like you did last year?
I'm not disappointed. I'm nervous that they're not going to go with Cody, and it's not because I want Cody to be the champion, but I feel like they've drug this out for so long that we need some closure. We need some finality. And I know back in the day, Hogan was champion at the first handful of WrestleManias, and came back and won it again, and held it. Of the first 10 WrestleManias, I think he was champion of probably 7 of them, or either wrestling for or defending the championship. So, but that was a different time. I feel like we're in this instant gratification and wanting things now, and making it happen. So, if Cody wins, then it will have been worth it. But if not, and they drag this out even longer, I won't be a fan of it. And I also hope that they don't put it on him and then have him lose it, a month later, or at SummerSlam, or whatever the case may be. But definitely agree with you on the Cena effect. I do think he has become that de facto face of the company, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think that he is well spoken after hearing him in the press conference. He's got uh, a bit more charisma, I guess, than his older brother, but obviously not as much as dad. But definitely would love to see the story finished, and whatever that means, and move forward. So
yeah. Speaking of that, when when are you going to start submitting your credentials to get into one of these post big show media scrums?
I thought about it again the other night when I saw some of and no offense to any of those in the questions, but I'm like, how the hell are these people getting credentials in? I know Chris Van Vliet
Mhm.
from seeing him online. I don't know him personally, but um, so he's legit. But some of these others, I'm like, what's going on here? So I think it'd be cool.
Hmm.
I you know I guess we need to get those views up and those downloads up. But yeah, um, what are your thoughts though on these press conferences? Because I think sometimes, and I know we're not going to go deep in the weeds. We've got just a few minutes left, but you know, people I think were split. Crucifying the people in the audience asking questions because I think most of them are fans that have a website or have a podcast. They're not. Stop calling them journalists because in the true sense of the word, and even today's journalists in the true sense of the word aren't journalists. But again, that's a rant for another day. But you know, don't get upset. At least they're not saying what was your favorite match or what was your,
Yeah.
whatever. But they're also not there to investigate either. So yeah, I'm kind of torn on them because I've watched the last couple of WWE ones and
Mhm.
I do like the candor and the seemingly the honesty and the transparency that we hear from these, as well as with the AEW ones with the scrums that they do. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I don't, anybody that is expecting like hard question, like,
Mm.
yeah, you're going to be disappointed. And yes, there are things that could have been asked at this one, but I don't think it was the time or place. Um, because you're there to celebrate the winning and move the story forward, I guess. And really, these press conferences, I've watched a couple of the AEW ones. This was the first WWE one that I started watching and only watched maybe 15, 20 minutes of.
Mm.
Um, unless you have somebody like CM Punk getting all angry and upset and going off on rants, there's nothing to them. It's fluff. Um, I get it that you're trying to be more sports like, you know, um, but I also don't watch any other sport press conference either. If unless I see a clip pop up and be like, oh, he was, this player was asked this question and here's the response. It's shocking. Yeah, I don't begrudge the people asking questions for asking surface level questions because I think one of the factors too is if you ask a hard question, do your credentials then get revoked for the next time they come around and you want to get in there? And that's a sad state that you're um, basing your questions on something like that. But as you said, the real news media does the same thing, so you can't begrudge
Yeah.
them. So I think for me personally, they're not that entertaining. They go on way too long, and it is nice to see kind of another dimension to because the wrestlers aren't necessarily in character
Right.
when they do it, so you get a more authentic realness out of them. But uh, you know, I in the AEW versus WWE war that exists only online and you know fans' heads. I do find it funny that WWE has started doing them after AEW has done them for the last several years, and um, I don't I don't get the point. I don't, other than to again look more legitimate. But it's a long-winded way of saying I don't care about them.
Well, hopefully people care about this and didn't think that we were not entertaining or going on too long. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this bonus episode?
Yeah, I'm we're on the road to WrestleMania. I am curious to see where we end up, and that is a really scary Cody Rhodes face shoving him in. Yeah, I think you've said it a couple times recently on your shows. Let's just sit back and be fans and enjoy the ride, enjoy the car ride until we get to WrestleMania. And then after WrestleMania, we can complain all about WrestleMania and how we would have booked it differently. And we're better bookers than the people working behind the scenes who know everything that's actually going on with wrestlers and what they're going through. So yeah, I'm excited. I wish we could get together for Mania, um, but they haven't invented teleportation yet, and flying is just too long of a trip.
True, true. We'll watch, we'll chat, we'll talk
Yeah.
more about it. We'll have more episodes here on YouTube as well as on the My 123 Cents podcast. Chad Smart, thanks so much for joining for this bonus episode. Friends, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will talk again very soon.